Okay, this will be the last of our skill review videos. We're going to review how to graph linear relations, which is another way of saying how do we graph straight lines. The form that we like the most is when our straight lines are what's called y equals mx plus b form. M in math, for some reason, stands for slope. Some people say it's because M in French would be monter, which means to climb. I don't know if that's true. B stands for the y-intercept. So the two things you have in this form is I already know the slope is m, the y-intercept is b, and then every equation of any type of relationship is always linking x and y. So our equations in this course will link x and y, which allow us to draw the shape on a Cartesian plane, on a grid. X is always the independent variable, which is your horizontal. And y is always your dependent variable, which is on the vertical axis. You can think about any equation of a line is linking x and y. So here's an example. You notice I still have y and x in the equation. This formula is kind of a pattern or a rule or a machine where I can input any x and it's going to output a y. So, for example, in the place of m, I have negative 3/4. So my slope is going to be negative 3 over 4. And my y-intercept, or my b value, is 3. So the y-intercept is where we cross the y-axis. So my graph starts at a point of 0, 3. And then if the slope is negative 3 over 4, remember that slope is rise over run. So if the slope is negative, I'm going to be going down. So I'm going down 3, 1, 2, 3. Then the run, we're always thinking about left to right, just like how we read English. So I'm going over 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that would create my next point on the graph. Another example, I'm in y equals mx plus b form. In this case, m, or slope, is 2, and the y-intercept is 1. So I'm going to start my graph where it crosses the y-axis at 0, 1. Right, that's the point 0, 1. And then my slope is 2. If you want to think about that as a fraction, it's just 2 over 1. Any whole number really has a denominator of 1. So remember, my numerator is my rise. In this case, it's positive, so I'm going up 2, and then over 1. Up 2 and over 1, and then I connect with a nice smooth line with arrows to graph my line. So it's pretty quick to graph or analyze lines in y equals mx plus b form. So we could list out the slope and y-intercept of each of these lines. So here I've got a slope of negative 1/2, down 1 over 2, and a starting point or a y-intercept of 5. If I don't see a number in front of an x, well, it must be being multiplied by 1. So I've got a slope of negative 1, down 1 over 1, and my y-intercept is negative 3. So b equals negative 3. I've only got one number here. Well, what's missing? Well, I still have something multiplied by x. So I still have a slope of 3/4, but it's really plus 0. I'm not adding or subtracting anything. So I must have a y-intercept of 0. You can kind of imagine that graph starts at the origin, right? It goes through that 0, 0 point. And lastly here, again, I only got one number. What's missing? Well, there's nothing being multiplied by x. Well, what could make the x disappear? Well, it must be 0 times x. So my slope is 0. That's a horizontal or a flat line. And my y-intercept, or my starting point, is negative 5. So that'd be a horizontal line going through negative 5. And we could go backwards. I'm not going to do it in this video. If I give you m and a b, you can pretty quickly write out the equation in y equals mx plus b form. You're just filling in these two parameters for m and b. So in this course, we're going to be graphing a lot of lines this week. So to graph a line or a linear relation in the form y equals mx plus b, we can use those two key pieces of information. We use the slope and we use the y-intercept. So it's pretty straightforward. If I look at this line right away, I can see that my slope is negative 1/2. My y-intercept is 4. So what we're going to do is we're going to start on our y-intercept, is where it crosses the y-axis. We're starting at that point 0, 4. And the slope is negative 1 over 2. So if it's negative 1 over 2, from my starting point, I'm going to go down 1. Negative means down. And then I'm always going over left to right. So I'm going to go down 1, over 2. I only need 2 points to draw a straight line, but I find it easier to be precise if I add in more points. And I'm going to connect with my ruler, and it's going to become vital in this course to draw the line all the way through my grid. And because lines in math are of infinite length, I'm going to add arrows to either end. I'm doing this in pen, so it shows up better on the video. You should always graph lines in pencil. You should really do the entire math course in pencil. Sometimes we have to do a little bit of work. You notice here, I don't have something in y equals mx plus b form. I need y by itself on the left. So this is 2 multiplied by y. So to get rid of that 2, let me rewrite this. I need to divide the left side by 2. But if I divide the left side by 2, I need to divide also everything on the right side. So 2 divided by 2 is just 1y or y. 4x divided by 2 is 2x. And then negative 2 divided by 2 is just negative 1. So now I have an equation of a line in y equals mx plus b form. So m is 2, b is negative 1. So I'm starting at the y-intercept at negative 1. And my slope of 2, you can think about that as being 2 over 1. So I'm going up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. So anytime you have a whole number, you can think about 1 being your run or your denominator. And again, I want to connect this line through my points and put arrows on to indicate that the line goes to negative infinity to the left and positive infinity to the right. One way to quickly kind of check does your answer make sense, lines with positive slope are going to go up from left to right, like this one. Lines with negative slope are always going to go down from left to right. So once you've graphed your line, just kind of take a look and check to make sure you're right. There are a few other ways that we can graph lines without thinking about y equals mx plus b. One way is to make a table of values. So I can pick numbers for my independent variable. Why don't we pick nice numbers, 0, 1, 2, and 3. Those are nice, easy numbers, starting at 0, just going up by 1. And I'm going to figure out if x is 0, what is y? Remember that an equation of a line is kind of like a machine. I'm going to put in an x value of 0 and see what y value gets spit out. So y equals 2, and I'm going to replace x with 0, because that's what x is. So 2 times 0 is 0, plus 1. So whenever x is 0, y must be 1. So each row in a table of values represents a point. So now let's see what happens when y is 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. So each time I'm filling in a row, 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. Two times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. Each time I fill in a row, I'm getting a new point that I can then add to my plot. So there's 0, 1. Remember, x comes first. That's horizontal. Y is the second coordinate. That's my vertical. So I've got 0, 1, 1, 3, 2, 5, and 3, 7. And again, I want to connect with a straight line that goes all the way through my grid. That's going to become vital in our first unit of grade 10 math. Method 2 we've already been over, so maybe you could do that on your own, slope and y-intercept. You've probably actually already gone through this all in class. One last method that you may have learned in grade 9, and you may choose to use in grade 10, is if I have a line in this form, something x plus or minus something y equals something, I could rearrange into y equals mx plus b form, but that might take quite a few steps. So another thing that I can do is I can solve for the intercepts. So the x-intercept is where the line crosses the x-axis. So I know no matter where it crosses the x-axis, there's no vertical height. So y must be 0. So I can replace y with 0. Another way of saying that is we call this sometimes the fingernail method, because if I multiply by something by 0, it disappears. So what I'm really doing is I'm replacing y with 0, but that just makes the y term disappear. So I have 3x equals 12. So x equals 4. So that's my x-intercept. We also know that at the y-intercept, which is wherever it crosses the y-axis, there's no horizontal distance. So no matter where it crosses the y-axis, the x-coordinate is going to be 0, right? It's going to be something 0. This one, by the way, was 4, 0, right? The y-coordinate was 0. So I've got this reversed. The x-coordinate is going to be 0. And we're finding out the y-intercept. So I'm plugging in 0 for x, and then we're solving for our y-intercept. Anything times 0 is 0. So I have negative 4y equals 12. When I will divide both sides by negative 4, y equals negative 3. So my y-intercept is negative 3. And again, I want to connect with a line. So you can use the intercept method. It might be a little bit easier when the equation of the line is in this form. But you could also have just rearranged this, right? So I could have moved the positive 3x to the other side. So then I'm left with negative 4y equals now negative 3x plus 12. So I've just moved the 3x on the other side, which means I flip the sign. And then to get y by itself, I have to divide everything by negative 4, which would give me positive y. Here I've got negative divided by negative, so that's positive 3/4 x, positive 12 divided by negative 4, negative 3. So this is the same line, right? I started at negative 3, and I went up 3 or over 4. So if you're comfortable always rearranging, you can always just use that y equals mx plus b method. You've got 16 lines now to graph as your independent practice. Hopefully you did a bunch of these already in class. If you have this notes booklet printed, you have more than enough grids to draw your lines, one per grid. If you don't, you can just use any graph paper. Okay, shoot me an email if you have any questions, and that's all for now.